Once again, it's such a joy to be here with you all and see everybody here. So many familiar faces. I just love this community, and I hope you guys just take the time to remember what a wonderful community it is here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan. I'm a Jesuit brother. I've been in the Society of Jesus for 5 years now. Time flies. Before that, I was a student here at UCSD, graduated in 2013. Most recently, I finished another stage of Jesuit training. I finished my Master's of Philosophy. I'm shocked, too. And I did that at Loyola University Chicago, where the Ramblers, for the first time in 60 years, made the Final Four. It was so awesome. I had nothing to do with it. But I think even more of a privilege it is to be back home here with you all, celebrating the solemnity of the Holy Trinity. It's one of those celebrations, doctrines in our church, where we say we can't fully understand it with human reason, but by faith alone do we come to understand the idea of the Trinity. And, I mean, how are we supposed to understand this idea that God is three distinct persons, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and three is one, one is three, and somehow they're all God? If you ask me, it's a big, hot Catholic mess. And even though I graduated with a degree in biochemistry from UCSD, a philosophy degree from Loyola Chicago, took my theology classes, I'm here to tell you that I don't understand it any more than you do. So how about I consider something that a lot of the Jesuits in formation like to do, which I'm sure many of you love to do as well. That's watch movies. Most recently, I watched Lady Bird. I was a little behind on that. Have you guys seen Lady Bird? Yes, good. It's a wonderful movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's about a young woman, about high school age, and her coming-of-age story growing up in a Catholic school systems in Sacramento. And it's about her complex relationship with her mother and her desire to leave the cow town where people hang out in parking lots. And there's a scene in which she meets with, I think it's the principal, Sister Sarah Joan, and they're talking about her college essay. And Sister Sarah says to Lady Bird, "You write with such affection and such care, it's quite clear that you love Sacramento." And Lady Bird reacts just like many of you did. She says, "I do? I mean, I was just describing it. I guess I pay attention." And the line that struck me, Sister Sarah responds, "Well, don't you think those are the same thing? Love and attention. Don't you think love and attention are one and the same?" A big part of Jesuit formation, of Ignatian spirituality that we're all invited to, is not how smart are we, or how educated are we, or how many degrees we have. A big part of Ignatian spirituality is simply learning how to pay attention. Ignatius, the founder of the Jesuits, said that if there's one prayer we shouldn't miss, if there's one spiritual exercise that we need to do, it's the examination of conscience. That is, the looking back on our day or a time period, looking at our thoughts, our words, our actions, the movements of our heart, where the evil spirit might have tempted us or the good spirit invited us to grow closer to God. We need to pay attention to where God is working in our lives. And so on this solemnity of the Holy Trinity, perhaps instead of thinking about it as this doctrine that we humans use to take the initiative to try to understand the mystery that is God, perhaps instead the Trinity is God's way of manifesting himself and herself to us each day. So real quickly, let me give 3 examples of how I've seen that just in my life this past year. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Let's start with the Spirit, this force that moves us, that unites us as human beings, as a community. Last week was Pentecost Sunday, and we always hear the story of disciples speaking in tongues. And I think that I've always kind of heard that or interpreted that as all of a sudden this person, just like that, speaks a new language. Pretty incredible, but perhaps instead, the disciples, they began to speak the common language of humanity, a language of love, of compassion, of care. Perhaps they all of a sudden learned to pay attention to the other in a new way. But the story I wanted to tell was that this past year I had the great privilege of working at a Jesuit school on the west side of Chicago. And I was a strength and conditioning coach primarily for the football team. And if you've heard of any of the violence in Chicago, the chances are you've heard about the west side. The school is about 98% black, and I worked about 8 weeks in the summer doing summer football Monday through Friday every day, and I couldn't go 3 days without hearing gunshots in the neighborhood. In the fall, I remember there was a march around our practice field because they were protesting the violence because somebody was shot 11 a.m. on a Sunday walking up to the Baptist church on that same street. It's a reality that many people live in. But the story I wanted to tell was about a kid named Andrew. He's currently a senior at Christ the King, and he wrote the coaching staff an email. And in this email he said, "Dear coaches, I really want to play football this year. I'm sorry I missed the last 6 weeks of practice, but I was shot in the leg in the spring. And if I can play, I'll give it everything I have, 100%, you can count on me." And of course, we let him play. And I grew really fond of Andrew throughout the season because I saw in him a part of me that I experienced when I was a kid. He was somebody who was always ready. He was kind of alert, ready to kind of pick a fight or run away, but he was really on call, fight or flight response all the time. And I saw him as that, but then I saw him just be a kid, fall on the ground and give out the biggest laugh. Fast forward about 2 months, the season ended. I was walking the halls of Christ the King. I run into Andrew and I say, "Hey, what's up? How are those college applications going?" And he gives a big smile and says, "Coach Mack, I got into University of Wisconsin, Marquette U, and Northern Illinois. I'm going to make my decision in a month." And let me tell you, I have never been so proud of anybody in my life. The spirit that I felt united us. I didn't grow up black. I didn't grow up poor. I didn't grow up on the west side of Chicago. But it was nothing short of the divine. The Father, the Son, Jesus, this person, the God incarnate, that we can come to understand God because he was made fully human. This past Lenten season, I don't know what it was, but I just kind of didn't feel it. You know, I was going through the motions. I was writing my thesis, going off to work every day, going to classes. And Good Friday happened, didn't feel any of the emotions that I'm used to feeling. The vigil happened, it was good. And then all of a sudden I found myself at Easter Sunday Mass. And again, I was just thinking, man, you know, where did it all go? And it wasn't until I saw this kid. He was probably 6, 7 years old. It looked like he was playing in his grandpa's walker, you know? And I said, "Oh, isn't that cute? Like a little kid playing around in the walker." 5 minutes later, I realized that was his walker. And inside of me, I said, man, that's just not fair. Why does that kid have to spend his life in that walker? Why can I run free as a 27-year-old big kid and he's constrained? And I felt sad. I felt upset. About 10 minutes later, I saw the kid put the walker to the side. His mom came up next to him, and she walked him to the back of the church. And he brought up the gifts. And his mom was holding him as he was kind of stumbling forward. And that was the most beautiful thing I saw all Easter season. He was giving all that he had, his full human being, sharing the gifts with the rest of us, sharing his gifts with me, and I saw Jesus in that little boy. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Last, let's turn to God, our parent, our father, our mother, our creator. As I mentioned, I recently graduated from Loyola Chicago, and I remember the graduation ceremony. It was for the graduate school, so master's and PhD candidates. And I was sitting with 4 of my Jesuit classmates, and the first part of the graduation ceremony was like an hour of speeches. It took forever. The second part was the PhD candidates. There was about 60 of them. And if you've ever been to one, each one walks across the stage. They read their lengthy dissertation title. Sometimes you have no idea what they're talking about. And shake the hands of the president and the dean. They receive their diploma, take a few pictures, walk off the stage. About halfway through it, a lady has her dissertation title read. She begins to walk across the stage, and we're in this big basketball arena. And high in the distant bleachers yells this squeaky little voice, a kid probably 4 or 5 years old, "Hey, look, there's Mommy." And the crowd chuckles. My eyes fill with tears. And I thought that, again, was the most beautiful moment of a joyous celebration. And as I did my exam that night, I reflected on why that 5 seconds made my day. And what I saw and what I heard was a kid who loved his mother, his creator, the person who had cared for him every single day, who loved him for no reason other than that he was her own. A glimpse of God. My friends, perhaps love and attention are the same thing. Perhaps when we say we love our God, we are invited to pay attention to the ways, small and grand, that God reveals himself and herself to us each day. Let us take the time to simply pay attention. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.